I'm back. We're ready. It's new shows. We're talking about the winners, the losers, well, just players that change teams across the free agency period. Mikal Bolton. Now, Michael, last time out, we had some problems. You're a little bit delayed. I think we fixed the issue.
Thanks, Josh. It's Mikal Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I'm 5'3" with an attitude. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. The sports are smaller at the moment. Not as much going on, but that doesn't mean that FanDuel doesn't have something for you, because they do. Every day, all summer long, all customers get a boost or a bonus every single day. That is right, something for everyone every day, all summer long. Go to FanDuel.com to get started. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms, so double bang it and thumb it up and leave all your comments down below. So, I'm back in Australia. We landed 2 hours and 30 minutes ago. I'm straight back in the studio because I love it. I love it. It's a great time. Over in the States, we're there for 10 days. We're in LA, went to San Diego, finished up in Las Vegas, watching some of NBA Summer League. Yes, I will do a recap on Las Vegas Summer League, and then we'll adjust our Dynasty rookie rankings after that. But I'm going to wait until Summer League is over before we get into that. So that is coming up. Just wait until Summer League's over before we get into it. There's more free agency little moves and pieces that have been just chugging along recently, which we're not going to get into majorly here, but there's still a few players that do need to change teams, potentially trades. We're all seemingly waiting on what is going to happen with Lauri Markkanen. Is anything going to happen with Kyle Kuzma? Is anything going to happen with the Portland Trailblazers, Vucevic, Levine, these sort of players? Right? We don't know about that at the moment. In terms of what this show is, we're talking about the best players to change teams. Now, don't get this twisted. This is not me telling you who the players are that have got the biggest increase in their value or anything like that. This is just the players from last season. We're going down the top 13 players ranked by fantasy points per game. Who were the best 13 players to change teams? Now, I reckon when I did this last season, I think we only had like 7 relevant players maybe on this list. This year, I've got to 13 who are relevant in standard leagues who have changed teams. And there's a lot of misinformation. Do you want me to soapbox a little bit? I'm back. Might as well. Haven't had this opportunity for a while. A lot of misinformation regarding the NBA CBA. CJ McCollum and Grant Williams, they're war criminals. Locked them up. They've ruined the NBA. Completely false. They've killed it. It's just max contracts and minimum contracts. Absolutely 100% false yet again. Just absolutely not true. Well, the owners did this and the players are just getting less money thanks to CJ and Grant Williams and all those guys. Again, 100% untrue. Just all this stuff is not true. Jalen Brunson took a smaller amount in his contract to save James Dolan luxury tax payments. Dolan, idiot. We'll get on that another moment. Completely untrue. All the new CBA does, it makes it harder for teams who want to be tight or teams that really can stack up bunches and bunches of talent. It makes them sort of break those teams up. Which, I don't know what fans want. They complain all the time. Man, look at this. Durant to the Warriors, ruined basketball. No one else has got a chance. And now we get more parity in the league, and we introduce rules to create more parity, to make it harder for some of these teams to accumulate talent, to allow other teams to have better chances. And people complain then, oh, now we actually want the good teams to be better than everybody. And we want to make it harder for other teams to get better. So, I don't know. Just remember that most of this, it's only maxes and mins, garbage. That the players get paid less money, complete lie, just not true. The CBA has ruined the way the NBA transactions work, not true at all. There is just a lot of misinformation out there. Oh, it's stifled all of the player movement. Yeah, you're right. There hasn't been that many trades, but I'd also, if we go back to last season and this time, how many trades were done? Was there actually just trades flowing everywhere? Not really. Not that I can think of. There was the Chris Paul, Bradley Beal 3-team stuff, but There was plenty of sign-in trades this season and some other trades. I feel like someone will say something, it catches on, and then just that becomes the norm, and it's just not true. The top 13 players to change teams. I said free agency. I'm lying a little bit because some of them were traded as not part of sign and trade, just a regular trade, but that's okay. That's okay. That's what we're here to talk about. And the first guy on this list is the player that I almost dislike more than anybody in the NBA, Dejounte Murray. He moves from the Hawks to the Pelicans in that trade that happened just a bit after the draft. We see Murray going to New Orleans. I still think New Orleans has some things they might do because I don't know how Murray, Ingram, CJ, Zion, center, how does that all make sense? Does that mean Herb and Trey coming off the bench? Does Zion start a center? There's just a lot that doesn't make sense there still. Last year, Dejounte was the 31st ranked player in -1 rankings. These are all per game numbers, and 28th on Yahoo Points Leagues. Now, it is fair to say that Dejounte Murray's assist numbers will likely go up. Now, McCollum, Zion, and Ingram all had pretty good assist numbers last season. Trae Young averaged double digits in Atlanta. I would imagine that Dejounte does the majority of the ball handling, even though CJ, Ingram, and Zion will do a lot of it still. But I would think that Dejounte Murray's assist numbers will rise. I also think that his usage will drop. I would also throw this out there. I haven't done projections. I am going to start today. I would think there is a chance that, yes, even though he was playing with Trey, who did a lot of assists, the other players on that team in the starting lineup, DeAndre Hunter, Jalen Johnson, Capella, Okongwu, they were low assist players. So even though there was Trey, who was a big bulk assist guy playing with him, Dejounte was able to get almost every other assist. Brogdon, again, but he played a lot off the bench. In New Orleans, there's not another 10 assist guy, but there's 3, 5 to 6 assist players in Zion, CJ, and Ingram. So while my initial reaction is that it's better for Dejounte to get more assists, maybe it isn't. Maybe he doesn't get the full Trae Young or even old Dejounte Murray assists runway. He might not. But I think it's almost definite that his usage will drop down. So where he sits there, 31st last season, 28th, again, I haven't done the projections yet. I think that I don't expect a big jump from there. Let's put it that way. I don't expect him to jump up massively from there. The next best player to change teams, and it took a while for this man to change teams, it was DeMar DeRozan. Not only did he change teams from Drake to Kendrick Lamar, I'm hip, I know what's going on in culture. DeRozan has changed teams in the NBA, and like the last time that he changed teams in the NBA, it took a long time to get there, and the team getting him gave up stuff in a sign and trade they probably didn't have to. Chicago's price to acquire DeRozan in the sign and trade still has not conveyed. It's a first-round pick to the Spurs. It's like top 10 protected. They haven't even given that up yet. They don't even have him anymore. And the Kings, while I don't care that they gave up Harrison Barnes or they gave up Chris Duarte, they gave up an unprotected first-round pick swap in 2031. It's a long way away. DeRozan won't be on this team then. Sabonis won't be on this team then. Will the Kings be terrible? It's possible. It's possible. And of course, the Bulls get no benefit out of any of that because they didn't get the pick. The Spurs did. Because the Bulls are terrible and they're useless. Anyway, DeRozan goes to the Kings. He was 45th in -1 last year, 30th in points leagues, and I would say it'd be impossible for anyone to argue with me that DeRozan will be better this season. He might maintain the similar level of efficiency, but playing next to Kobe White, and he had 10 games of Zach LaVine, and Vucevic is very different in terms of how much you handle the ball versus Sabonis and Fox. When Sabonis is averaging 8 assists a game and Fox is at whatever it was, 5.5 or 6, and DeRozan's big value was being sort of a creator, something has to give there. And his overall usage numbers, they might stay similar, DeRozan, but the assist numbers probably have to change somewhere. And DeMar DeRozan, who I thought was somewhat not washed, but I had some real skepticism of him moving across to Chicago. After he made that move, all of his mid-range shooting numbers just went through the roof, like out of nowhere. He was able to have the most efficient years of his career, aged like 31 to 34, whatever it was, through 4 to 5 percentage point jumps in mid-range shooting. At some point, that could fall way off again. Not banking on it, but it is just a more squishy situation, harder to get usage, harder to get assists, even though DeRozan is the second best player to change teams based on fantasy points rankings from last season. I think there is going to be a large enough downturn here. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The summer is here. I've just experienced the summer. It's hot. And there's not many sports that are cracking at the moment. NBA's over, NHL's over. Major League Baseball at the moment, we're in a break. There's nothing going on. But we'll have some things going. WNBA, baseball's back, the Olympics are coming up. And FanDuel is going to give something to you, all customers, a boost or a bonus every day, all through summer. This is not for new customers, those people who are slow to pick up FanDuel. Although if you haven't gone to FanDuel, go on now. This is for everybody. You get a bonus or a boost every single day, all through the summer, to check out all of the sports that are still going, plus the ones that haven't started, but the futures are out. That the over-unders, I think, are out on FanDuel for NBA season win totals as well. So go to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel is an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And don't forget to gamble responsibly. All right, let's move in now. A reminder, if you haven't, to check out all the Locked On Podcast Network shows and our Locked On Sports Today as well, which has a live stream on YouTube. Instead of you don't have to listen to the uninformed, misinformed shows on ESPN and Fox, you can check it out, Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. What we're doing here is talking about the best players to change teams across the NBA. Should call it the transaction season, but we just said NBA free agency. DeMar DeRozan and Dejounte Murray were the first two. You might be wondering, where's Paul George? Well, he's right here. Because Paul George was great. His category league value is better than his points league value last season. And that's why he's third on this list. But he moved from the Clippers to the Philadelphia 76ers as the Sixers completely sort of remade their team. Well, not completely, but sizably remade their team. He was 25th in -1 category ranks, Paulie George, and he's 44th in Yahoo points leagues. I would think playing with Kawhi and Harden, going to playing with Embiid and Maxey, makes him in a similar-ish spot. Harden better than Maxey? Or is he? He was lower usage than Maxey. But let me put it this way. Paul George will be a clear number 2, I would think, in Philadelphia. Does Maxey take the full James Harden step back in shots? I'm not sure about that. Because Harden, I think he averaged 16 points a game. But he was almost double-digit assists. And Maxey can't do that, I don't think. And then Embiid's like a 34 usage guy and Kawhi's like 27. So Maxey was higher usage than Harden. Embiid was higher usage than Kawhi. So it might be hard for George to replicate these numbers, even if it feels like he's more likely to be a clear number 2 than he was in LA. As everybody, he is 1 year older. Well, he's actually like 3 months older from when he played his last game, but you know what I mean. And he's in that aging portion of his career. I would guess overall when I do the projections that Paul George will project worse than he was last season. That would be my expectation. Just the Embiid, but then I guess the other part of it is if Embiid plays 50 games, then George's numbers go way up. So it's a little bit risky reward. Is that you can look at where he was 25th and 44th in cats and points last year and go, well, if Embiid plays 75, George won't hit that number. If Embiid plays 50, George will smash through that number. So it probably ends up, in the end, it probably ends up meaning you take him in a similar spot, I would guess. Yeah, I think that's probably about right. The guy that he is, I guess, replacing in the Philadelphia 76ers lineup is the thick hogsman himself, Tobias Harris, who moves across to Detroit, 2-year contract, and will almost definitely start. Now, the Pistons still make some curious moves. The Tim Hardaway trade was bizarre to me. But overall, the way that this squad looks, the Pistons, is they have legitimate NBA shooting talent. Last year, they had Cunningham, who was the number 1 guy, and he could shoot a little bit. He's not an elite shooter. He's a pretty good shooter. And then nobody else. You had Isaiah Stewart as the next best shooter. Like, come on. Late in the season, Simone Fontecchio came across. This is how bad the Pistons spacing was, is that when Mike Muscala came across, they had to play him because he was their second best shooter. Now Harris is not an elite shooter, but he's pretty good. There's him, there's Hardaway, there's Beasley, there's Fontecchio. There's a lot more guys, and there's someone else that I'm missing completely off the top of my head that I can't think of, who also can shoot on this team now. They also grabbed Paul Reed, too, to be in the mix to be backup center. Harris was 82nd in -1 ranking, 66th in Yahoo points leagues. If you split Harris' season up, though, I think it was like 140th over the last 2 months. He was terrible down the stretch. Couldn't hit anything. He is older than you think as well. Now, this situation for him is significantly better than it was in Philadelphia. He will be the clear number 2 behind Cade Cunningham, without any question, where he was the 3 behind Maxey last year. He's still going to be his boring self, though. marginally above average points, about average threes, above average rebounds, average to below average assists, average steals, slightly below average blocks, average field goals, above average free throws. The same guy, except now it's just a little bit more volume. Not that he has more ball handling, because he won't. It's more about just more shot attempts. So the scoring just goes up. He probably goes up from where he was here. Top 50 points league season is possible. He's 82nd in -1, like 60th maybe. His defensive numbers fluctuate quite a bit, but he's got a really strong role. I think the minutes are secure, and he's going to get more usage. So it is definitely a better season on the look ahead here for the thick hogsman, Tobias Harris. Another trade that happened was Mikal Bridges. He went across from the Brooklyn Nets to the New York Knicks. We know about all the draft picks and all that stuff that happened. Bridges was a massive disappointment. He was someone that I avoided significantly last season. I was not into it. There were people who were suggesting first round. I said, you're joking. There were people that wanted him in the second round. I said, probably not. I was still wrong because I was like, yeah, third round, I'm okay with it. But he is not a number one player, and none of that. You will never convince me of that. In the end, on that one, it's good to get one. I was right. Now he moves to the Knicks. He was 91st in -1 rankings last season, Mikal Bridges, 74th in points. Right? So we know that in the end, Cam Thomas took more usage than Bridges in Brooklyn. He moves across to New York. His role is completely secure. He's going to start. He's going to play 36 minutes a night, probably. But behind Brunson, behind Randall, he's third in offensive pecking order. Yes? OG 4th, the center 24th. Mitchell Robinson will get one shot a game. So the usage for Bridges will definitely be down. The question we have to ask then is, does that absolutely elite efficiency that made him that guy that people loved in fantasy back in Phoenix, where he's a 64% two-point shooter and average 1.7 steals, will that come back? And my response to that would be not necessarily. It might, but there's no guarantee. We've seen this plenty of times. Lowering usage does not always mean efficiency jumps. It does sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. It is not a guarantee. We think it is. It makes sense that it is, but it doesn't always happen. And same with steals, which are just generally a very, very fluctuating stat. So I think it's fair to say that Bridges has zero shot of living up to what the preseason expectation was last season. First or second rounder. Zero chance of doing that in New York. None. Has he got a chance of being better than 91 in -1? Yes. Could he be better than 74th in points leagues? That one's probably tougher because we know that points leagues are driven by usage and scoring. Usage, scoring, and minutes are the three biggest things that contribute to points league production. And his minutes will stay the same. His usage will drop. His scoring will probably drop. So I think his points league ranking will drop. Maybe they even switch, where his category is 74th and his points league ranking is 91st. That, I think, is a probably reasonable view of where Mikal sits for this season. Today's episode is also brought to you by my good friends at eBay Motors. Now, I was over in the US, so I could have used my passion, drive, and patience to maybe access eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit, because it's only available. I'm going to use the end of the ad right now. It's only available to US customers. But I didn't do it. I leave it to you guys. You guys need that. eBay Motors knows what brings home championships, fantasy championships, NBA championships, and it's those three things: passion, drive, and patience, plus a guaranteed fit. And Mikal Bridges, he might be a guaranteed fit in New York. I think he might be. They've got over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die / car, and you can just browse it. Check the part, make sure it fits, get what you need for your car straight from eBay Motors. And it is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. And like I said, and I'll say it again, just in case you didn't get it, eBay Motors is only available, eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to US customers. So many things I could have done in the US that are only available to me when I'm over there. But you know what? Just try to play it safe. Play it safe. All right. That is 5 guys, the best 5 guys to change teams. Let's get down into the back end-ish zone. The big fella who's now in Portland, Deni Avdija, who was an interesting player where the hype of Deni Avdija last season, I think, was completely... This sounds like I'm going to be rude to him, but it was just not accurate. He had a really, really good stretch, and he improved a lot this season. But there were insane discussions about Deni. And it was one of those ones which I love when it happens because it proves the point. Is that Deni had like a run and you go, man, Deni Avdija is averaging 19 points over his last 6 games or 25 points over his last 6 games. And I go, yeah, he's shooting 61% from 3. And let me tell you, it's going to fall a lot. And it did. He was good. He was fine. But the fact that the Wizards just said, no, like he's not a part of what we're doing, should, I think, give you an indication of, yeah, he's a useful player, but he's not this burgeoning star that many thought incorrectly that he could be. He was 120th in -1 rankings last season, despite that breakout, and 82nd in points leagues. Pretty good. I would expect that he goes to Portland and he starts at the 3 next to Jeremy Grant at the 4. Now, the Blazers could do a million things still. Do they trade Jeremy Grant, one of the, again, more frustrating players for me in the league? I don't know. But this would have to mean that someone like Toumani Camara, someone like Matisse Thybulle, who started quite a few games for them last season, or the fact that you could go Simon, Scoot, and Sharp at the 1, 2, and 3. There are going to be people coming off the bench. So let's say Scoot is starting, Simons is starting. Is Sharp starting? Where the hell does Avdija fit? Is Grant starting at the 4? Thybulle at the bench? It is Donovan Clingan, DeAndre Ayton, Rob Williams. For a team that is bad, and they're not good, there are too many players there still. So Deni changes teams. He had to sort of fight early on to get touches and roll in Washington. It didn't fully establish all the way through. Is his position better than it was last year? No, it's not. Because we have seen, I think, through Deni's career. Now, I love Deni Avdija's contract, by the way. Don't get me wrong. It's a great contract for a valuable rotation / role / 4th, 5th starter player. That's what he is. But if you look at the Blazers team currently now, I don't think there's an absolute guarantee that he starts. It would mean one of Simon, Scoot, Sharp is on the bench, along with Thybulle, Camara. That's what that means. And any hope of Clingan starting at 8 and at the 4 just couldn't happen at all. So I think it's a significantly worse spot for Avdija because there's just too many question marks. And if he's only 120th last season, 82 in points is good. Not sure he's going to be drafted. He probably still will be. But I do get the feeling that he might get overvalued. I think that's a pretty big possibility. Let's talk about the player that just moved in the other direction in that same trade. It's Malcolm Brogdon. He went from Portland to Washington. Now, this is one of the best 13 players that changed teams, all on a per-game basis. He was 92nd in points leagues, 122nd in -1. But is he even going to play a second for Washington? Well, there's no movement really going on at the moment. They still have Jordan Poole and Bilal Coulibaly and Corey Kispert. They drafted Bub Carrington, who looked great at Summer League. They drafted Alex Sarr, who looked not so great, but yeah, we'll see. They've got a million centers, so Sarr probably can't play much at center, meaning he has to play the 4, which means he has to share minutes with Kuzma, or Kuzma plays the 3, which means Bilal has to play the 2, which means Poole has to play the 1, and where does Brogdon fit? It's still, a lot of unknowns with Washington. So while Brogdon was 92nd in points leagues, 122nd last season, with a lot of weirdness in Portland, they played him too much, and in the end, they faked his injury down the stretch. I cannot see how he would be a player that I would consider drafting in standard leagues last season. Now, this does allow me to just bring this point up that in this sort of list of the best players to change teams is Tyus Jones, but he doesn't have a team. I don't think he's coming back to Washington, but I have no idea where he's going. The reports all seem to be that he's going to the Clippers, and Russell Westbrook and Bones Highland are on their way out somewhere. Westbrook maybe to Denver. If Bones goes to Washington, they are creating the most hilarious team of all time. Poole, Bones Highland, Bub Carrington, Jonas Valanciunas, Alex Sarr, Kyle Kuzma. There's just so many of these guys that's going to make them... we talk about players and teams and guaranteed fits. Thanks to you, eBay, give me another payment. We talk about these synergistic fits. Those guys altogether are antagonistic, meaning they produce way less than what they all are as individual players because there's too many of the same sort of guy there. But again, that team is still up in the air and we don't know where Tyus is going. Joshie Giddey goes to the Chicago Bulls in a trade straight up for Alex Caruso. The Bulls, again, just one of the most useless organizations in the NBA. You can tell me that Giddey's only 21, which is 100% correct. He's very young still. And maybe he is this future all-star player. I don't think he is. But this team is going nowhere, and Giddey is going to put up numbers this year. Even last season, where he was routinely benched and would play limited minutes. And I I say me saying this, some of you would listen, some of you wouldn't have. I was like, I'm not interested in Josh Giddey at ADP because one of his biggest strengths was rebounding, and now Chet Holmgren plays there. And then they reduced his minutes a lot. So he was 128th in -1, 102nd in points leagues. But if he is playing 32 minutes a night, he will put up numbers that put him around the 60 to 70 mark, maybe 40s in points leagues. The problem still remains is that in Chicago, the understanding or the idea at the moment is that, Giddey will come in, he'll start, but will he? I guess he will be, but let's figure it out. Kobe White, Zach LaVine, both still there. That's a 1 and a 2, the starting backcourt from last season. Okay. Well, you can say, well, maybe Josh Giddey's actually going to play the 3, or they go with those 3 guys together. Okay, that's fine. And then Patrick Williams, who they re-signed for $90 million, he'll play the 4. Oh, what about Matas Buzelis? If they're actually tanking and rebuilding, does Buzelis not start? I guess he doesn't. Was he played 20 minutes off the bench behind Patrick Williams? Because Buzelis is not really a 3, he's a 4. I think ideally you'd want to try Williams at the 3, Buzelis at the 4. It is weird they both play the same position. I don't know when I was going to drop this nugget, but I'll give it to you now. They signed Jalen Smith from the Pacers. Now, I'll tell you why, this is what I was told, why Jalen Smith chose to leave Indiana, a conference final team, where his role was a backup. When he could have been a backup, you go, well, he went to Chicago to be a backup too. I was told that Jalen Smith chose to go to the Bulls because he believes he will get a significant chance to start this season. Does that mean that the Bulls will realize that Vooch is bad? I don't know. Or will it mean that he sort of knows that they're trading away Vooch? So just keep that in your mind about Jalen Smith. Jalen Smith won't play the 4 in Chicago, I'm guessing, because, again, $90 million on Pat Williams and the number 11 pick in Matas Buzelis. And I don't think that Smith is a 4. I don't know what he is, really. But he signed in Chicago, Jalen Smith, because he believed that he had a chance to be their starting center. And you know what? He's not wrong. He's not wrong. So anyway, that's why it's hard to know with Giddey at the moment, because what happens with Vooch, what happens with LaVine, and I said all of those names, and I never mentioned Ayo Dosunmu. So where the hell does all of that fit in? Again, you could think that them trading away Caruso with no draft picks, meaning they value Giddey to be a starter next to Kobe White. And that's next to LaVine. Then it's Williams and Vooch, meaning Buzelis and Dosunmu come off the bench? I don't know, man. I don't know. Still weird. Still a lot of stuff to happen. That brings me to another weird situation. We go back to Washington, and the big fella, Jonas Valanciunas, signs there for a very low contract. Basically, the same contract that Jalen Smith signed with in Chicago. And he was a guy that allegedly LeBron was going to take a pay cut so he could go to LA, which not really sure why they'd choose that player. But there you go. He goes to Washington, 3 years, $30 million. He was 126th in -1 and 106th in Yahoo points leagues. And I think it is fair to assume that Valanciunas will play more minutes than he did last season. I don't think he's playing 30, but 25 maybe. But I don't know. Because if Kuzma's staying there and playing the 4 and Valanciunas is starting at the 5, where is Alex Sarr, the number 2 overall pick, who claims he's a 4? So is he going to play at all the 5 where Valanciunas, Bagley, Holmes, and Vukcevic on the 2-way are still there? Don't know. Does he play at the 4 and Kuzma's at 3? And back to all those problems that I mentioned earlier. Bagley's no good. Holmes is no good. I know this. And Valanciunas is better than them. He's not good Valanciunas, but he's better than those guys. So I think he probably is a 26-minute-a-night player. Sarr gets a few minutes at center, but it's still a very confusing rotation. So JV at 126th in -1, 106th on Yahoo points last season. I think it's very, very safe to say he should improve from that heading across to Washington this season. The 10th best player. You might be wondering where this guy has been. Well, here it is, Isaiah Hartenstein. He moves across from the New York Knicks to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Much like with so many of these, I don't know whether he starts or not. One of him we know who's going to start. It's going to be Shea. It's going to be the Bronco. It's going to be Chet. Those 3 are going to start. The next question is it Hartenstein, Dort, Caruso? 2 of those 3 have to start. One of my TikToks talking about this, clipped out of a show, seemed to get a lot of people's attention, where I said that Hartenstein can shoot. Well, he sort of can shoot. I know people go, well, you didn't in the Knicks. I know, because Tom Thibodeau didn't let him. And his numbers aren't supreme through his career. He had a 40% year with the Clippers where he had 40 attempts. But it doesn't matter. The main point is that he can sort of shoot. Chet can shoot. And playing them together does work. Irrespective of who's the 4, who's the 5, it doesn't matter. All right? They can play together. Whether they do or not, I don't know. Hartenstein's a very good rebounder, and he helps their main problem, which was rebounding. So that's why he's going to have to get minutes. Would they have paid $87 million for a guy to play 20 minutes a night? Definitely not. So he's going to play 25, I would guess, 27 maybe. Starter or bench doesn't really matter. Last season, he was 87th in category leagues and 119th in points leagues, and I would suggest that's on 25 minutes a night. I would think that it is very, very likely that that improves, even if the minutes stay the same, because we all know if you're a center playing for Tom Thibodeau, you never get any usage. He was like a 19 usage guy with the Clippers and with the Cavs and with the Rockets and with the Nuggets. He was like 11, 12 with the Knicks. By the way, I'm going to sprinkle these in over the next few days. Saw Tom Thibodeau at my hotel. There's about 10 NBA teams staying at the hotel where I was. Was down in the bar at the bottom of to go up to the rooms, and Tibbs was there. And he's talking to two other guys behind me as I'm getting a drink. And the only thing I hear is the guy and Tibbs start talking about, so should I do my bad American accent? No, I just do my Australian accent. He's like, hey, yeah, so what do you guys think about how we use timeouts in that situation? And I had turned around and go, bro, it's 11 p.m. in Vegas. Why are you talking about timeouts? But that's Tom Thibodeau, isn't it? I got a lot of other stories about Vegas as well. I'll drop them in other points. But Hartenstein, yeah. I would think that those numbers improve. Just with more usage, similar minutes, maybe more minutes. Klay Thompson moves from the Golden State Warriors to the Dallas Mavericks. Klay looked washed many, many times last season, and that allows me to play it. I'll do it in a sec. We'll play the music. Because he looked terrible. Obviously, the final game of the season in the playoffs where he went 0 for 10, it's terrible. It's a bad way to go out. Not going to break down all the legacy stuff from the Warriors. It's not really our point here. He was 109th in -1 rankings last season. Klay 122nd in points leagues. And he goes to a worse situation for him. Team-wise, better team. But now he plays where last year he was probably the second usage guy on Golden State. He's clearly the third here. Clearly the third. PJ Washington, intermediate, that's better. Usage player. Dan Gafford, lively low. But Klay is third behind Kyrie and Doncic without any question. He's going to get a lot of open threes. We know this. He was already shooting threes at a very high rate, like 40-ish%. We know he's been this good shooter. So how much better does that get? It's very easy for us to say, look at all the open threes he will get. True, he was already hitting them at 40%. So if it goes to 42, but he gets fewer overall shots per game, does it matter? I would say probably not. And I think there are going to be times with this team and this squad where Klay's cold streaks and his reduction in defensive ability means that he doesn't close games. So he might only play 29 or 30 minutes a night instead of 32 or 33. As guys like Najee Marshall come in and are used for defensive purposes in that lineup. So I am thinking that Klay is not a draftable player next season, especially in points leagues. Not going to be interested in that whatsoever. Another Golden State Warriors player changed teams. Chris Paul moves on from Golden State and goes to the San Antonio Spurs. Now, Paul is obviously a million years old. I think we're all well aware of Chris Paul's age and all that stuff. 106th last season in -1 rankings, 125th in Yahoo points leagues, and he came off the bench for the majority of that and played nowhere near starters minutes. Even though he's old, even though his percentages take a hit, even though the steal rate can be iffy, there is almost no chance that I see Chris Paul being worse than that number this season, unless he just completely breaks down and completely is terrible. He will start over Trey Jones. No question about that. The rest of their lineup, I would expect that Stephon Castle comes off the bench. And then it's Barnes, Sohan, Vassell, and Wembanyama. Paul is going to have the literal best lob target in the entire NBA to throw it to. Could he get back to double-digit assists? It's possible. I don't think he's going to play 31 minutes a night, but he could get close. The injury risk on an old man like this is significant. It's obviously really significant. But if you're taking him around that 106 mark, or God forbid 125 where he finished in points leagues, there's zero downside and it is all juicy upside. Paul might be very close to washed, and to be fair, he can have the drop as well. But he is getting 5, 6, 7 extra minutes a game, and he throws the ball to Wemby. It's pretty good. The last player is the rabbit hunter himself, The big small fella, Alex Caruso. Now, there are plenty of casuals who watch the NBA who do not understand how good this guy is. I've got into arguments with them all the time. Oh, you think the Thunder got better because they got Alex Caruso? He's a bum. Yeah, like he's a top 5 defensive player in the league, top 3 perimeter defensive player in the entire NBA. Like, he's good, yeah. Will he start? I don't know. The Thunder probably don't... Now, here's the argument. Do you think that he's a better defender than Lou Dort? I do. Very clearly think he's better than Dort. He's a better offensive player than Lou Dort as well. But Caruso might not play the same minutes. Now, he did come off the bench for the Bulls for some of last season. He also started for a big chunk of it. In fact, I'm going to double check this. I'm going to do a live fact check. Yeah, I did my live fact check. I didn't even tell you what I was checking. I was checking to see how much he came off the bench versus starting. So I thought, I'm pretty sure he didn't come off the bench enough to even be in consideration for 6th man of the year. Because I hear it all the time. He's a bench player. He plays off the bench. He started 57 out of 71 games last season. He came off the bench for 14 games. Now, even that to me is a surprise. I knew that he wasn't eligible for 6th man, but he started 57 games. Now, if you thought that that's how much he started, good for you. You've got your finger on the pulse. That's great ammo for when I argue with someone else now about Caruso. He played 29 minutes a night, started 57 out of 71 games. He was 71st in -1 rankings for categories. Ridiculously high. Yeah, good steals, good block numbers, good efficiency. 129th in points. Nowhere near as good in points because points is driven by minutes, points, scoring points, and usage. And he's bad at usage and he's bad at scoring. He's not a 30-minute a night player. I would say that he's in a worse situation because there's no guarantee that he does start on this team. Because, again, 2 of Hartenstein, Caruso, and Dort will come off the bench. But he was awesome. He was a very clear top 75 category league player last season. And he's the 13th guy, or the 13th reason that I'm doing this show today. And what was the show? If you're tuning in late, well, it was the best players to change teams in the NBA's transaction window, which is still going, by the way. We've still got players that still need to change and many trades that need to happen. And, of course, the Tyus Jones one is interesting because he hasn't found a squad yet. Wherever he goes, he's going to be a backup, so he's not going to be draftable. But he would have been in this list as well. And that would have made it 14. What you can do now is you can hit thumbs, you can double up, and you can double bang, and you can welcome me back to Australia with a big kiss in the comments over on YouTube. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.